What do you think the whole experience of the crisis we've seen around the mini budget and then the pension industry in the UK and then the Bank of England's management of that, what do you think that has told us about hidden risks in the system?
Well, I think there must be risks in the system. After almost a decade of super low interest rates, the markets adapt to that. And now we have this sudden spike in long-term rates and also on the short end. It would be a miracle if nothing were to blow up. Now, this one in the UK, however, is totally self-inflicted, of course. I mean, this is just a crass policy error that was committed and maybe is going to be exacerbated by another policy error of the Bank of England by saying you've got till Friday and you've got to sort it out, when at the same time you're saying we have concerns about financial stability. This doesn't really match somehow. So in the UK, for a long time, the institutions, the policy making was considered by investors and rating agencies as one of the key strengths. The stability and the technocratic professionalism. It's really hard to make that case right now in the UK. I mean, look at the government, the Treasury, look at the Bank of England, look at the pension fund industry. They all have egg on their face.
In terms of any more serious crisis for the UK, is there any pathway to that? I mean, we look at the debt levels, and actually they're high, but relative to the rest of the G7, they're not the worst. In fact, they're far from the worst. But does that not matter for markets at the moment?
The debt, just comparing yourself with someone who's doing even worse is, of course, somewhat misleading, because there's always someone who's doing worse. And what really matters is not the stock of debt, but the debt affordability. And the affordability has greatly improved with this low interest rate environment over many years. This is going into reverse right now. So the debt will be much harder to carry for the government as well. And we know that there are additional pressures through aging societies, etc. So I think that is a problem. To throw into that mix of unfunded tax cuts of really huge proportions is such a shambolic error. I really wonder who is advising the government on that, if anyone. And then, someone's got to climb down on this. Otherwise, it's going to get worse. And I just have to hope and think that it's going to be the Chancellor in his medium-term framework is the one who's going to climb down. Because so far, the government hasn't done that. They've retracted the top rate, but that's like a small sliver of the overall cost of the tax cut. So there's still this problem out there. And maybe the Bank of England is now withdrawing this support and trying to scare sort of Kwarteng into submission and pulling back. But that would really be the end of his chancellorship.
Let's talk about the EU, because even as the focus has been on the UK, we have seen both Bund yields and Italian BTP yields rising. We're now at like a 13-year high, I think, on the BTP yield. But somehow it's not getting as much focus. Has the UK basically given air cover to the EU or the Eurozone at this point?
Yeah, air cover is a nice term, but I think it's more than that. Obviously, markets tend to focus on one crisis at a time, and there is the risk that this sort of ambulance chasing moves over to the Eurozone next. I think that's quite possible. But the positive about this fiasco in the UK is that it really is a warning sign for governments in Europe, and of course I think here particularly about the new Italian government, not to do something reckless or outright stupid, otherwise the markets will punish you. And it would be foolhardy to speculate that the ECB would bail you out no matter what. The Bank of England's U-turn does raise the questions, can central banks really follow through, or will they blink when financial stability is at risk? The Bank of England has blinked. It now claims it will unblink again. We'll see whether that's going to work beyond Friday. The ECB has put out this transmission protection instrument, making clear that it is very worried. This will be tested before time. But Italy in particular, which is the biggest concern, has still very, very low interest burden and has a long duration of the debt. So they have a lot of time to actually adjust to this new environment. If there's the political will, they can pull through.